Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Tommy.
We've reached the end of the year.
I can't believe it. Another crazy one in the books.
A very crazy one, and we can just cut to the chase. That's what we're going to talk about today.
And can we talk about? Can we talk about the craziness that was this year, 2022?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's been crazier years in recent memory, but we can absolutely talk about this year. It's been a roller coaster of a year.
You're not kidding. It feels like every year it just keeps getting crazier.
Well, funny enough, as we were prepping for this too, I said we wanted to do a year in review, but a lot of pop culture podcasts or websites or things like they want to talk about things like the slap or the other things that. That's not our jam. That's not our thing. We talk about nostalgic things and fun things and
fun
TV
things.
Shows.
Yeah.
So I figured what we can do is we can go through some of our favorite and least favorite movies, TV shows, and other things from this year that fit our vibe. Fit our vibe, if that makes any sense.
I like that.
Yeah.
We keep it posy over here.
So to kick it off, we actually have like a running list of episodes we're gonna record at some point, or we plan to, and there's a few that I think I've seen but you haven't, and then vice versa. And I want to say that there's more on our list of things worth talking about that you've seen that I haven't. And
that's fair. I'm just going to go out and say this. The Bear.
Yeah.
To me,
absolutely.
one of the greatest shows I've ever seen as someone who worked in a restaurant as a manager for almost 17 years. And you haven't watched it, right? I
haven't, because, and my aversion to it has been, as it's been described to me, is it's anxiety inducing watching it. Like
yes.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But I actually don't know the answer to this question. Have you worked in the restaurant industry?
I haven't, but here's the thing. I haven't, so I don't know that side of the world. I have, I've watched a lot of Kitchen Nightmares. Does that count?
Kind of. I mean, yes, it does.
Okay.
But I loved watching it with my partner because he's helped me out and worked during certain events, but like there is nothing like, it is truly like you go to battle with the people on your staff every Saturday night, every Sunday night.
Yeah.
And the things you say and the anger that you have towards each other. And it's just like, it's like a different world. And if you haven't worked in it, there's really no way to describe it. And I've never been able to describe it. Even like waiting, like that stuff never happened in our kitchen, like, again, I worked for a corporate company, but I just like, it was funny and there was, some fun to it, but this was so freakishly accurate that you're right, that it wasn't anxiety inducing, but I loved being able for him to see, it's like, wow, that was insane. I was like, that is exactly what it would feel like on a weekend night. Like I still have nightmares that I can't get ranch to a table, like physically can't walk to the table to give them ranch dressing. Yeah. So to me, that if I were to pick one complete standout show, it's that. Or another one you haven't seen.
Oh.
Not to throw you under the bus.
No.
Friends. Don't hate on him for this because he has his reasons. House of the Dragon was mind-blowing, and it was, as a Game of Thrones fan, which I are.
Yeah.
It was incredible. So it's so funny because those are my two biggest, and you haven't seen either.
I haven't seen either of them. I mean, Devil's Advocate, and I know this breaks your heart, but like
it's okay.
I don't think I've seen all the Harry Potter movies.
I don't understand because your wife is like I am, but that's fine.
I know. I mean, it's the same with like Lord of the Rings. It was the same with Game of Thrones. I didn't watch any. It's really funny. I don't know what it is. I don't have an aversion to it necessarily. I'm just not tickled, we'll call it, by medieval settings, which is weird because I feel like I'd like to, but I don't. It's just not, I don't know why I'm not into it.
I'll work on this. I'll see if I can't get you there. Maybe we have to have the right precursors to the viewing party.
I want to go to Universal Studios and check out
we are planning
all the Harry Potter
that
stuff. Yes. By the way, one thing you randomly like just threw in there and mentioned in passing, but I wanted to mention it because it came up literally in the last 24 hours. You mentioned the movie Waiting, which was Ryan Reynolds and Anna Faris, right? The really good movie, right?
Great movie.
It's really funny because I feel like there's like one actress in that movie who I was like, I never saw her in anything else. And then randomly I was watching, my wife just has Hallmark on 24 hours a day.
I would never.
Do the entire
I love
month.
it. It's the best.
Yeah. And there's this movie pops up and I'm like, that girl looks really familiar. Like she looks familiar, but I don't know what she's from. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And then sure enough, I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's the girl who plays Natasha, who's I think like the
hostess.
The hostess. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
She's now like a Hallmark movie star. Big city girl.
Before I say this, I feel like she is also in a show that was on, I want to say the Disney Channel about gymnasts. And I was obsessed with it.
Really? Like a long time ago or recently?
No, a long time ago.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Well, while you look that up, I mean,
yes, she is. She was in.
Really?
She was in a show about gymnastics called Stick It that I loved, and the main character, I was like, well, yep, nope, I'm bisexual. That is the hottest girl I've ever seen in my life. So she's from that show.
Well, funny enough, and it's kind of funny given all the latest Hallmark Channel hubbub this year with Candace Cameron. Who, by the way,
yeah, that's
another side note. I didn't realize, and it makes more sense when you put all these things together, right? I didn't realize that she was actually the sister of Kirk Cameron. Did you know that?
How did I not know that?
Yeah, I know.
She's kept her maiden name. How did I not put that together?
Kirk Cameron from Growing Pains, who also had that.
Wow,
like,
their parents must have cleaned up if they weren't following the Coogan account rules.
Yeah.
90s were good for the Camerons.
Yeah, Well, the Growing Pains was like late 80s, early 90s, and then they have the his sister then got I almost said Home Improvement, Full House. Anyway, I'm going off weird tangents here, but anyway, the whole point is Hallmark Channel had a Hallmark Channel and Candace Cameron disagreed and had a little bit of a divorce because it wasn't Christian enough.
Bye.
And funny enough, I saw this movie called Christmas in Toyland, where she works for like a toy store. She's like a data analyst, and for like a company that sells toys. I don't know. It's a Hallmark Channel movie. It's not deep in plot. Of course, there's like the hunky guy that works at the Christmas store or the toy store that, spoiler alert, guess what happens. But anyway, so she's in that. She's also in one called Heart of the Holidays. A Date by Christmas Eve. Like, so she's been in a bunch of these. Yeah. And then side note, I was like, oh, what has she been up to? Or like what, apparently she's Canadian, which explains a little bit. And B, apparently she, also apparently she was in Glee randomly, which
Yes, she was in Glee. I do remember her in Glee.
Okay.
I'm a Gleek. I loved Glee.
And then a couple of years ago, and maybe this was the part where her being in all these Hallmark movies, turned Candace off. She produced a miniseries called The S Word with Vanessa Leggies. I can't actually pronounce her name. But it apparently was like a dive into her sexuality, and she considers herself gender fluid. And bisexual.
Candace won't stand for that.
For Christmas? No. So
not Jesus's birthday.
Yeah. So anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, randomly, very, very, offshoot and talking, still on topics of this year, but that randomly came up out of the blue. So
I feel like we were graced with a lot of straight to streaming service.
Yeah.
Fantastic shows in the past year or two.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, we talked about Severance on here. That was incredible. Yeah. But there have been so many.
What was I going to say before you jump off of Severance, aside from everything we already said in Severance, is there anything else that's come up since our podcast about Severance? Because it's kind of like, speak now or.
I love the fact that so many people, I mean, it was the first episode we put out.
Yeah.
So many people, friends, family, people in my, work life that have listened to it have been like, this is what I think the numbers mean. And I love hearing the different theories that people have and people being like, oh, no, no, your co-host is right. You're wrong. And I was like,
Yeah.
it wasn't even that was not even my thought. But I just love it. It has created, like, people are dying to talk to me
Yeah.
about that. And I think I told you this yesterday. My mom started to listen to the podcast, and she got to the part about what we thought the numbers meant, and she had never seen Severance. So she turned off the podcast. She's like, I don't want to be influenced by yours and Tony's thoughts of what the numbers mean. So she was binging the show all day yesterday. She's probably done with it by now.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to see what she thinks, because it was quite controversial and people had some really like out there
Like
ideas.
what? Do you remember any? The
one that I loved, and I maybe you touched on it, but I don't remember, is they were, because the timeline of when Severance is supposed to be set is really, I think we talked about that. It's like we couldn't really quite put our fingers on it.
Yeah.
And
you don't know if it's
you have
current
no
or
idea.
future. Yeah.
And this girl I used to work with was like, I thought that they were rewriting history and writing the future. Like they're trying to pull out like numbers that, you know, when they get their feelings off the screen, that they're, okay, that's an event that's going to happen. Like they were rewriting history in the future. And I was like, that is deep. And I can't wrap my head around that. So
yeah. Well,
I don't want to talk about it.
It's like that Nicolas Cage movie where there's like a time capsule. By the way, I only know this movie from those like
I love
weird
Nicolas
TikTok
Cage.
explainer.
You can't hate on Nicolas Cage in front of me. I love him.
Oh no, I'm not hating whatsoever. No, where I was going with this specifically was there was like a Nicolas Cage movie where there's like a time capsule that's opened, and there's like a bunch of like, you know, numbers on a paper, and he can't figure out what it is, and he's curious, and turns out it's the date and time of all these like mass casualty events in the world. And then he figures out that there's one doesn't know what the other numbers mean. Turns out there's their coordinates for where it's going to happen. But anyway, I was going to say, I mean, if that's sort of what you're saying, that could potentially be is like, you know, like numbers associated with events or kind of thing. It's so funny. I mean, over time, it's been enough gap between when I watched Severance earlier this year that enough time has passed now where I'm just like, I don't even know what to think. Like, I don't even know.
It's true. It's true. I was so strong in my convictions at first, but now I can't wait for the second season so that I can revisit that. Cause I mean, obviously they might tell us, but I loved that. I love that everyone has such a different view of what it meant. And it was definitely one of those shows that if people hadn't watched it, it got them to watch it. After they listened, like, well, now I got to watch this stupid thing.
Well, what do you think the draw was? Like, I think that's the thing too, is like, for me, it was the top lines of like Adam Scott, directed by Ben Stiller, and just the aesthetic and like, even like the music from the trailer, which is a track that I always enjoyed, back in my down tempo days. So what do you like, how have people, aside from listening to this podcast, how have people found the show? Because I don't know what the draw is.
I think it's what you're saying is, for a lot of people, I know myself included, I just wanted to watch it because Adam Scott was in the lead. I was like, I love him. Anything he touches is gold. I'm in. Sign me up. Actually, your wife's brother told my partner, like, oh, you've got to watch a show. You've got to watch a show. And I had tried to get him to watch it. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, we'll watch it. And then as soon as it was endorsed by him, he was like, oh, we got to watch the show.
Yeah.
But it was one of those shows. I didn't know what to expect. Like, I didn't even know what the draw was for me other than the lead.
Yeah.
And maybe I did know that it was a Ben Stiller directed. I don't remember if I did or not, but it's definitely, you have to watch it to understand the draw. I don't think that I can explain it to people and get them to watch it.
Yeah.
So that was hopefully what the episode did, is got people at least interested enough to watch it, because a lot of people were like, I listened to the podcast because I wanted to support you, but I have never heard of that show.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me, having watched it.
There was a big push for it, but again, it's, you know, Apple TV is still, I'll call it in like the infancy of like them figuring out their shows and how it works. And and all that. But like, because they had this and they had the morning show.
I loved the morning show. It was incredible.
I wanted to like the morning show.
I loved it.
But I couldn't get into it because I love anything like related to media and that kind of world. I really enjoy. And it's funny too. It's another one of those shows that people are literally just like taking clips and posting it on TikTok, and people are learning about the shows from that. Was like the Newsroom, which at this point is like a couple of years old. I didn't realize that. What's interesting about it too is because it's sci-fi. To your point, you don't even know what time period we're in. You don't know if it's current day or you don't know if it's a couple of years in the future. You don't know
it's
what.
It's so ambiguous. Yeah, for sure. It's up in the air.
Well, and because it's sci-fi, it could be anything, and you sort of have to just kind of go along with the ride. So I do appreciate that. Although my only issue going forward is for season 1, because there wasn't a lot of people talking about it. It was at my own pace. I waited until there was like all the episodes were released, because Apple still does the weekly release schedule. They don't dump it all.
That's going to suck.
And so, we're going to get to a point where we have to like watch an episode and wait a week, which I don't want to do because
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, it's good. Season 2, I think, is coming next year. So we'll get into that.
Okay.
What was another favorite of yours from this year?
Well, I mean, I looked it up right before we got on, and I was like, what was the most viewed show of 2022? And it was Yellowstone. And I mean, we watch Yellowstone, but we did not watch Yellowstone when it started. It was, again, like 2 seasons in.
Yeah.
Maybe 3, 2 seasons in. And I was like, well, I guess we're going to pay for Paramount Plus now. We just binge watched 2 seasons, and we are big Sons of Anarchy fans.
Yeah.
And it's written by Tyler Sheridan, who's in Sons of Anarchy. And, I kind of like the lawlessness cowboy thing. Like I'm into it. It's entertaining, and I really enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Didn't love the last season. The newest season's been a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it is, I don't know what it is about Yellowstone, but it is, I mean, everybody that I talked to is like, oh, Yellowstone's on tonight.
There's 1883, which is the prequel series.
So it's when their land, that is based off of, I guess, when his great grandfather was made a deal with the Native Americans, the indigenous people on the land, that they were going to I don't know, parcel the land out. They had an agreement that he could have the land for a certain amount of years, and then something, and then there's another one right after that, right, that just came out, and that's basically his grandfather.
Yes.
Or great grandfather. And then it's, I can't imagine, unless there's going to be one more season before it comes up to present day. But I don't know.
Oh, so you think there's going to be like another like 1970? Like I do.
Maybe it's going to be, because they have someone cast as him. Mm-hmm. The main character's name is John Dutton, and they have someone cast as a John Dutton.
Yeah. Like
younger age John Dutton. So maybe.
Yeah.
Because they have a whole cast of those characters already. But I'm not sure. It's a very entertaining show.
Yeah.
It's definitely, Well,
what I was going to ask, I guess it was also the same with like Sons of Anarchy, right? The main character, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen the show. I've only like read articles about it or heard people talk about it. The John Dutton, which is Kevin Costner's character in it, right?
Yes.
He's sort of an anti-hero, right? Like he's not supposed to be the good guy. Is that correct?
He has moments. He has moments where he's the good guy, and he has moments where, very similar to Sons of Anarchy, he's doing what he has to do to protect his land and his family and all that kind of stuff. So I would say he's got some anti-hero vibes for sure.
Okay, because that's the thing too, is the only critiques I've heard about the show is that it's a great show, but it's the same thing with like, and I don't know if this is on any of our lists necessarily, but The Boys, which is the Amazon like superhero.
We haven't watched it yet. I want to, but I have to catch up.
Well, with that too, is like the bad guy is essentially supposed to represent right-wing ideologies, and he's the bad guy, and people are like using him as their avatar images and stuff. And it's like, no, you're not supposed to look up to that guy. That's not the guy to look up to. And I think it was the same for Sons of Anarchy also. And then the same thing I'm hearing about Yellowstone is that they're like, no, he's not supposed to be you're not supposed to root for him in those moments. Like he's not a full blown good guy. He's the anti-hero. But
Sons of Anarchy, though. Jax Teller,
yeah.
I don't care what he did. I do not care. I mean, we named our dog off of a character from Sons of Anarchy. So
really?
Yeah, our dog's name's Opie Winston, off of one of the characters that died. That's a fun fact.
Fun facts.
Fun facts.
Is Yellowstone something you have to jump in from season 1, episode 1, or is it something that people can do? Because there's 5 seasons now. It's 45 episodes.
Yeah, I recommend starting from the beginning just because they lay a lot of groundwork, which I think is imperative to the way that you view the characters. But what's interesting about, again, similar to Sons of Anarchy, but what's interesting about Yellowstone is they do a lot of flashbacks to describe relationship dynamics, because you're like, why the sister like hates the one brother, and you're like, I do not understand this. And they do a lot of flashbacks to explain it. So eventually by like the 2nd or 3rd season, you're like, oh, okay. All right. We finally got there. Okie dokie. So there is a lot of groundwork that gets laid before you're up to present day. But, again, it's one of those shows that is very entertaining. I can see why it's one of the most viewed shows, because it does bridge the gap, like you said, from left and right politically. Everybody kind of is enjoying it, which is very rare these days.
Yeah. And then, by the way, before I move on from there, do you feel as strongly about the prequel 1883, the prequel series?
We haven't watched it yet, and I don't.
Okay.
We got a lot going on. There's we had a lot of shows going at once. We had you introduced us to Murderville, and so we were trying to save those, because I really would love to talk to it. I laughed so hard watching that show. Yeah. That was hilarious. But we had a couple shows going at once. So I just, maybe we'll get there. I don't know.
Well, it was only a limited run series. It's only 10 episodes, and that's it. The show, there's no second season. It's just limited run. Sam Elliott's in it. So
Tim McGraw.
The deep voice. Yeah.
Tim McGraw.
So one of my favorites of all time, I'll start by saying I probably at too young of an age grew up watching Mr. Show with Bob and David.
Yes.
In the 90s. And so David Cross, Bob Odenkirk.
One of our favorites.
And so like growing up, I mean, that defined my humor, like for the rest of my life. Like my friends and I would quote Mr. Show when we were like 11, 12 years old, 13, whatever we were, quoting stuff and watch episodes over and over again. We thought it was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. Absolutely defined my sense of humor and all those things. And then, but that was the thing too, is like watching over the years, like David Cross continued on in comedy. He lives in your neighborhood. He
does indeed.
We've bumped into him at the supermarket.
I bumped into him at the bar.
Yeah. Nice guy, right? Nice guy.
Very nice guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
To say it out loud, David Cross is a very nice guy.
As is his wife, Amber Tamblyn.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely lovely and intelligent woman.
She was from what TV show? My wife knows it.
She was in House.
She was in House too. I didn't realize that.
She was incredible in House.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's so good in House. She was also in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
That's not the one I'm thinking. What the one I'm thinking of is Joan of Arcadia was like her breakout role. That was my wife, who is sheltered her whole life, was able to watch Joan of Arcadia.
Oh.
Which was a Joan of Arc, spin thing on CBS for old people and families.
I was watching the CW.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just for teenagers.
She wasn't allowed to watch that.
I was watching Dawson and Dry Hump. That's what I was watching.
But anyway, where I was going with that tangent was, so Bob Odenkirk, huge fan of his work, huge fan of him, and then obviously continued to do comedy for a while, still does comedy, but he started breaking into like some small dramatic spins, right? He was on, he had a small part in the anthology series Fargo, which was cool.
Which was so good. Yeah, that was fantastic.
And in the middle of there somewhere, he also popped up in Breaking Bad, which was supposed to be just like a quick, like, hey, would it be cool? Vince Gilligan was a fan of his and just, offered him the opportunity to, do like a small role on the series. And then that turned into being
one of the best characters of the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Better Call Saul, in my opinion. So the series wrapped this year with the final episode, final season. In my opinion, better than Breaking Bad, which was a very high bar in general, across any like TV, series enthusiasts, any entertainment snobs. But I truly believe, like, if you watch that series, Better Call Saul, from beginning to end, it is a amazing character study. And I think also, like, Vince Gilligan, who I'll give it to him, like, almost pseudo call it 2 for 2 on like big popular series, and they're doing a series finale. He came out the other side of it. And what was interesting about it, in slight spoilers, maybe I'll try to avoid the spoilers, but
yeah, because we haven't watched it all yet.
Yeah, I won't spoil it, but I will say this is, clearly him in Breaking Bad, right? You know the character,
Yes.
You know who he is. And in this, who is amazing in her own right. And I don't know, she deserves any award that could potentially come her way. But Rhea Seehorn, who plays Kim Wexler, which is his, like, I don't know what to call her through this, like his love interest or his partner, whatever you want to call her. She's amazing, but she's not in the world of Breaking Bad. So you're like, all right, well, what happened? Because this is a prequel. Like, this entire series takes place before Breaking Bad. And so for years, from like when the series came out in 2015, even before that in 2014, when they were announced that they were making the series, people were speculating, like, what's going to happen? Like, where does who is this person and whatever. But as the series, especially this first season, everyone's, speculating like, well, she's not in Breaking Bad. So clearly she's not a part of his life at some point. So what happened?
Do you get closure?
You do absolutely get closure.
Okay.
And it is so well done. And I will say too, like, Vince Gilligan is amazing at like series finales where it's like you're left and you're like, that was good. Cause I feel like that's the problem. Like, how many series have such a problem wrapping things up and putting an ending on things? Like, almost infamously, I was actually, funny enough, another TV show that Bob Odenkirk randomly popped into as like a, and I forget the character he played on it, but he popped up randomly in like How I Met Your Mother, which had a very decisive ending. And like, they've apparently been retconning it, and I never watched the original, but like Dexter was another one where it was just like, oh, that ending. And then people were not happy with it. And now they're like, oh, we'll bring it back. More
Which
endings.
they did.
Yeah.
They did. I watched it.
Man, oh man, you should watch it. I want to do a whole episode on Better Call Saul.
I'll gladly do it, because excited to watch it. It was one of those things where it came out and it's like, okay, we'll wait until there's a few episodes, and then, you get caught up in other stuff. So
yeah,
definitely have to. It's on our top of our list, I would say.
Well, maybe slightly top it, because the other show that had another season this year that was amazing, that I highly recommend. So it was the third season. It's going to go into they're going to do a fourth season. I don't know how many more seasons they have to go. I don't know if there's one more or if that's it or how many, but the reason I mentioned is because A, it's shorter, it's more digestible. So if you want to commit to something and binge through it, a lot less to binge through versus like, Better Call Saul, which are like hour-long episodes, and there's like, I forget how many seasons, a few. But Barry on HBO is amazing. I don't think you haven't watched that one either, right?
I have watched a few episodes, fell in love with it. But like we were just talking about before we hit record, one of those things I was like, oh God, he would love this. So I have to wait until my partner can watch it. And he doesn't, we can't watch shows from April 1st to mid-November because of his job. So yeah.
Well, now it's like Blizzard season. So like, as you guys get snowed in,
can't wait.
Like, all right,
can't wait.
The list.
Yes.
I will say Barry is one of those really amazing shows where, again, and it's kind of similar to Better Call Saul in that aspect of like, it's sort of a pseudo character study, and seeing someone who's a comedic actor play a more dramatic role is really enjoyable, because the amount of humor they're able to bring to the table, like, because any dramatic role or any TV show, like even like, Sons of Anarchy, right? There's points when like the characters in this dramatic TV show say something funny or do something funny or kind of like wink or nod or something, right? So with these, when they do it, they're nailing it, right? Like, so like you get like in a scene somewhere where they have to show a little bit of humor or something, but then it's also a lot more jarring when they get really serious and intense, because it's like, holy shit, I know this person's a comedian. They're not supposed to be this intense. And when they nail it, and I got to say, Bill Hader, amazing in the role. He co-creator and, like he directed some episodes, right? Just really creatively. amazing. And then on top of that too, the rest of the cast in the show is also fantastic. And of course, you know who from Arrested Development pops up in it, right?
Who?
Henry Winkler.
Oh, I did not know that. I love that.
And then I'll just say Anthony Carrigan, who plays NoHo Hank, is just a scene stealer the rest of the entire series too. A big fan favorite of him.
Okay, so Barry's up there. Barry's on the list.
And Barry, what's great about Barry too is it's an HBO series. It's also produced by the same guy who, which I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I promise I think it's a good thing. Alec Berg, who's been a big producer for HBO series. He did obviously he did Barry, but he also did he also helped produce Silicon Valley, which is another great show. Mm-hmm. I think he also he came from Seinfeld, like he produced Seinfeld, or was one of the writers or producers on Seinfeld. Excuse me. But anyway, where I'm going with that too is like there's a certain he also to connect the dots why I mentioned Seinfeld because he did Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's a producer on that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But between Curb Your Enthusiasm, Silicon Valley, and Barry, like he's done enough or been involved in enough HBO series that like there's that like punch that comes at the end of an episode where it's like, whoa, I have to watch the next episode. Where you like grab your remote, be like, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. Whatever he knows that like little secret sauce and injects it into everything he does, and it's such a great show. But also the shows are 23 minutes long, 28 minutes long. Yeah,
so you can fly through them.
Like so. Fly through them, but they're because they're shorter, right? Better Call Saul. I'll mention this too. Breaking Bad feels like a slog. Like if you go back and watch Breaking Bad, or if you ever watched it, like the concept of like watching episodes again, it's like, oh, it's so long, and like there's a lot to it. Like shows that have to run an hour long seem to like inject
very
a lot
dense,
of like
yeah,
and there's a little bit of fluff in there, or like it's my one aversion to going back and watching The Sopranos a bunch is because I'm like, there's so many fluffy episodes where it just takes so much time, but you're not really getting anything out of it. It's more like the journey than, that you're going on kind of thing. And so Barry in itself, short, less than a half hour show, densely packs episodes in with content that's enjoyable, worthy there. And I will say, I've watched Better Call Saul a few times. Even though it's an hour-long show, it is still densely packed enough where they don't meander. There's no like scenes that go on for the sake of timing and just like padding time to an episode. So when you get a chance to get into that too, don't expect it to be like, he's doing this whatever thing in the scene. I can go get popcorn in the other room or go get a drink. Like
you have to watch every second.
Okay. Yeah, you have to watch every second.
That's fair.
Vince Gilligan densely packs the episodes with content. It's really good there. But anyway, that's my spiel. Those are my two, aside from Severance, probably my two big ones for the year was Barry and Better Call Saul. I still think, and I will say this out loud just to end it, I still think Barry is probably the best show on TV right now.
Okay. I'm sold with Bill Hader right away. It's another one of those things that I'm sold on. But you're right. There is such a draw when it's shorter episodes like that. And it's like, I can catch up so fast. Yeah. I'm in.
It's only a half hour.
In an afternoon.
It's only a half hour, but I'll end up sitting here and watching 4 hours worth of half-hour shows versus 4 1-hour shows or 2 1-hour shows. I'll commit more time because the pieces are smaller.
Now, in the realm of shows that have continued and a new season came out this year, are you a Stranger Things fan?
I am. I tend to be one of those people that's averse to the thing that everyone is talking about. Like if too many people are talking about something, I'm like, I don't know, it's too popular, it's too mainstream. I'm not consciously thinking this. I think it's subconscious. Yeah. No, I'm saying I'm not consciously thinking this. I'm just saying it sort of is when my brain works. I'm like, it's too, I don't want to, there's too many takes. I was sort of getting that. And I mentioned it to you the other night of White Lotus, but White Lotus, I was
have watched that.
But at the same time, it actually does look interesting, but it's almost like everyone's talking about it. Everyone shut up. It's too popular. Nothing can be that popular.
You sound like me in my serious punk rock phase in high school, and I would get so pissed when the little underground punk band I loved got popular. I was like, great, now they suck, even though their music was the exact same.
Well,
it's
it's
like,
like-
oh, I can't like him anymore. I'm a sellout.
It's like back then if someone's like, oh, you like punk rock? Oh, yeah, I love Paramore.
And I saw Paramore when they first started, and she was like, so young, just screaming on stage, like, oh my God, I love her. And then as soon as she got popular, it's like, that's not even punk.
Too popular now.
That's that Blink 182. Same thing. It was just like, you can't like that anymore.
Yeah. But I'm sorry. Yeah. And Stranger Things, I think it's one of those things where like, yeah, it's gotten very, very popular. There's a lot of, their kids are shipping each other. I remember a couple of years ago, what the hell is a ship? But I like it. I think this time
I
around
love it.
too,
It's just very enjoyable. I just enjoy the shit out of it.
Yeah. And on top of that too, I think what's good about it too is like, I think too many people have given it crap about overplaying its hand on trying to be the nostalgic, like, oh, remember the 80s? Remember the 80s? This last season too, and I'll give it to them, I don't think it was done poorly at all. I think it was actually done really well. Yeah.
I was kind of glad that they left, their home base and got out a little bit because, that stuff can get stale. Like how many times can the monster invade the high school, Like how many times can we go there? So I feel like, they only have one season left. Yeah. So next year we're going to be talking about the end of the show. But I'm always excited for the new season. And I'm sure there's things when I'm watching, I'm like, oh God, this is a little corny, but I don't care. I just enjoy it. Like I truly enjoy it.
Yeah. My only, and this is the minor spoiler here, but like my only issue with it is that every year they've sort of come around and like, there's a, hey, we're introduced to this brand new person. Oh, okay. Now they died, right? Every single season they've done that. Right. And I will give them credit, right? Because I think at the end of this, every other season has been this massive chaotic thing happens that no one knows about except for like the small group of our characters. And it's all secretive, right? It's all like no one really knows the truth. And this is the first time too, where it's just like by the end, it's like, holy shit. Like this is, because we talk a lot about world building and, like in Severance, it's like, could this be happening right now? Or are we supposed to believe like, that, the company exists in our current world or an alternate universe kind of thing, or in the future or in the past. Right. And so Stranger Things has existed it existed in the 80s. So, the jump of imagination is like, imagine that this place did exist in the 80s and like this all happened in the 80s. It's like the new Ghostbusters movie that came out last year or the year before was like, oh yeah, the 80s in New York was crazy. Like that, there were ghosts everywhere. There were these guys called the Ghostbusters, right? Where it's just like, oh yeah, over time we've moved on and like that kind. And I think that's how I had viewed Stranger Things, is like the concept of the show was like this existed in the 80s in our world with just the addition of that this happened kind of thing. Now it's getting to the point where it's like, oh no, like shit's breaking loose and like the entire neighborhood, like no one doesn't know about what the hell is going on or that there's monsters and shit.
And I'll say, Eddie is one of my favorite characters written in recent years for any show. He was just incredible. He was, and Stranger Things is one of those shows. It's really good at affecting the pop culture of today. Yeah. I mean, for Halloween, Henry and I were Hellfire Club members to take our nieces and nephews trick-or-treating. Yeah. But I mean, Metallica, for crying out loud, at their concerts when they play Master of Puppets now, have the scene of Eddie playing it behind them. Like it's just, I love that about Stranger Things. Yeah. That they really do.
I was going to say, job. This last season, it was Eddie, and then it was the
pizza guy.
Well, him too. I was going to say from the main cat, like this was, Sadie Sink, who's, also in the Whale. My only issue, you guys, you should have, where I was going with the whole thing was like, obviously poor Eddie, but I think they should have committed to like saying goodbye to Sadie Sink. You can't have everyone constantly survive. You can't have everyone constantly dodge the bullet. At some point, there has to be consequences to things. And I think it obviously impacts, in a good way, moves the story along and everything. But I was like, they didn't let that one go.
I know. And it's I would have been, like those things you're like, oh God, don't kill her. I'll be so mad at you. But at some point, you're right. Someone's going to have to die, and everyone thinks it's just going to be 11.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have been so sad, but I felt like it was there. I felt like we were right there. We were right on the cusp. Couldn't make it happen.
Yeah. Almost there.
I will say though, do you watch limited TV series when they come out?
It depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you got?
Under the Banner of Heaven.
I don't know that one.
Okay, so it's Andrew Garfield.
Okay.
And he is a detective, maybe a little controversial, I'm not meaning to be, but it's based off a true story of these murders that were happening within the Mormon religion. And Andrew Garfield plays a detective who is also Mormon, and his partner, oddly enough, is a guy who also plays the chairman of an indigenous people's tribe on Yellowstone.
Okay.
Is his partner in Under a Banner of Heaven, and they're kind of trying to solve these murders that are happening within the Mormon church. And it ends up, Andrew Garfield really questions the Mormon religion because he's starting to see how corrupt it is and all the awful things that happen and how they cover up these murders. And it is really well done. And I am a true crime nerd. So that was really good. And everyone that's watched it in the true crime community has been like, that was incredible. Very True Detective like.
Yeah.
Without the fantastical stuff.
I have not heard about that one. Where does it take place? Is it a period piece or
it's a period piece.
A period piece.
Somewhere in the Midwest. I think it's Utah. In the 70s, I want to say.
70, okay.
But I could be wrong.
But really well done, like highly recommended.
I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I kind of knew the story. I'd read the book that this is based on, and it is about like, the people that had taken the Mormon religion way too far, like the fundamentalist group of the Mormon religion. But it is really, it's dark. I think it's set actually in the 80s.
Okay.
I'm trying to look it up.
Okay.
The book is set about the 1984 murder of a woman. So it's really good. I
gotta say one thing though, and my mind is kind of blown right now, and so I don't really know how to handle this.
I'm nervous.
I'm looking this up as you're talking about it to like just get an eye on it, and I'm looking at the cast, and I'm looking at one of these cast members, Rory Culkin. There's another Culkin,
another Culkin brother, and he is messed up in this show.
I mean, it's kind of funny. He looks like a combination of Kiernan and Macaulay, which is kind of funny. And then apparently there's another one called Quinn Culkin. So I didn't realize how many Culkin kids were out there.
They're killing it.
Working. Well, I guess Quinn Culkin, apparently, I guess, was this the only movie she was in? She was in The Good Son.
Okay.
Which was the one with Macaulay Culkin and,
that was a dark movie. I loved it, but it was dark.
I watched that at too young of an age.
As did I. My dad, that was a blockbuster rental. He used to always, whenever we'd stay at his house for the weekend, he'd be like, you can pick out a movie. I was like, ooh, this one looks scary. And he was like, yeah. He'd be asleep, resting his eyes.
Yeah.
And so we'd watch the movies. But yeah, that was dark.
Yeah, apparently it was the only movie she was in, but I didn't know how big the Culkin family was. I didn't realize there were more. This I feel like has been Kieran Culkin's like year. I think he hosted SNL earlier this year too. Like, I feel like he just in himself, aside from Succession, just deserves a mention. He's been all over the place
everywhere
this year and welcomely
and doing well. Yeah, it's not like he's just taken 100 roles. He's been doing well.
Yeah. And he's really, he looks youthful, and I don't know if that's just him or because we're locked on to like remembering him from old movies and stuff, but he's 40 years old. He doesn't look 40 years old. So
no. Not at all.
Good for him.
You don't watch the like Star Wars resurgence shows, right?
I mean, it's another one of those things again.
Okay.
And don't get mad at me.
I'm not going to get mad at you.
Or anyone can get. I mean, anyone can just roll their eyes at me.
Kyle,
yeah.
We have someone out there named Kyle who will be very mad at you for the statement. So go ahead.
Because I watched The Mandalorian the first season. I was like, wow, this is well done and all that.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And then after that, I was like, all right, I get it. Little baby Yoda, okay, I get it. Like it just became too loud, and then there was just too much. I mean, in general, and I forget where I saw this. There was an article of like some adjustments both Disney are making and some other studios as of late, but like where maybe they're recognizing like, oh, there's a little bit of like superhero fatigue. There's a little bit of Star Wars fatigue. We've been releasing too much content around this. Like you realize that for decades there were only 3 Star Wars movies. Now there are 8. No, I'm sorry. I got that number wrong. 3, 6, 9. There are 9 Star Wars movies plus a original series, right? Because you have like the prequels, the originals, and then you have the Rey series, right? Then you have Rogue One. Then you have Solo. You have all these other. Those are just the movies. And then how many different TV shows do we have around Star Wars? I'm not even counting the cartoons.
Well, I don't want. The same
Obi-Wan.
people are going to be mad at me because I've never watched the movies. I've never watched a single movie.
You never watched a Star Wars movie?
No. And I know that's mind blowing because
All right.
I fly my nerd flag high, but I have really enjoyed. We've watched The Mandalorian. There's 2 seasons of that. We watched Boba Fett. We're watching Andor right now.
Yeah.
We forgot about Obi-Wan. We got to go back to that one.
Yeah.
But we're watching Andor right now, and I thoroughly am enjoying them.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and it's probably very similar to when, we can also talk about the Lord of the Rings show that came out on Amazon Prime this year, which I watched and loved. It was so beautifully shot. But then I saw the budget for that show.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're getting a second season of that.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying it. I just also realized that watching it, there's a lot. It's the Star Wars world, the universe is so dense that, when I'm watching with my partner, he knows all of the names of everything that, and I'm like, ooh, I like the little motor thingy they're on. What's that? There's a lot I don't know, but I'm enjoying them. So I feel like I'm watching Star Wars light, like, dipping my toe in the water.
Funny enough, right? One of the only spin-off movie, like Solo is Solo, right? Like I feel like there's a whole other story there I won't get into now, but I did like Rogue One. I did like them telling a Star Wars story without having to rely on Skywalkers and R2-D2 and all like the things like trying to create a new world or a new story in the universe that is Star Wars. And I thought that was really well done. It was the same thing with Mandalorian too, where I was like, okay, cool, you're telling a story. But then then you get into Baby Yoda. It's like, all right, like, remember Baby Yoda? Like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know Yoda. Yes. Okay. We don't need to just throw things in from the main storyline just to remind people that this is Star Wars. And I liked Rogue One, right? Which counter to my argument right now is the movie literally ends connecting the dots to the first Star Wars movie episode. I guess now it's considered 4. But anyway, my whole point to that is this is Andor's connected, which apparently is, has gotten a lot of great reviews. And out of all the different Star Wars series, even Mandalorian, people really like Andor. And I will say it connects to Diego Luna, who's the main character in there. Andor, he is in the movie Rogue One, and this actually connects the dots to the beginning of that story there too. So again,
all things I would have missed.
Yeah,
because I'm not familiar.
Well, funny enough, as far, we're sort of waiting for the right moment, or I haven't actually even told you this, but I'll say it here so people are aware. I have been waiting for at some point we will do a podcast event, and then invite folks to go and watch a movie with us and go host a free movie. And I've been trying to think of what would that movie be? Like, would it'd have to be something, older, and it'd have to be something that
yes.
nostalgic.
Breakfast Club.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it's like maybe we make it a Star Wars movie. Maybe we make it
Star Wars
something.
movie. Oh my gosh, I'll feel so lost. I'll have to count on fellow nerds to fill me in.
Well, if it's the first one, although I mean, at that point, I'm like, I don't want you to wait any longer to see Star Wars, because I feel like, we were just talking about the Harry Potter land, whatever it's called, Harry Potter world down at Universal. It's the same thing for the Star Wars world at Disney, which you have to experience at some point once Disney figures out their shit. But
yeah, I mean, I feel a little embarrassed that I'm not, well versed in my Star Wars nerdom, but my mom read Lord of the Rings to us when we were younger. So it was a very Tolkien household. And then, Harry Potter just naturally happened. And I mean, back to that, I don't know if you watched the Lord of the Rings show, but it was beautiful. It was really well done. It was set people up in arms because they decided to cast, people of color. And apparently that's, I don't know why people suck so badly, but it was beautifully done. And I thought incredibly cast. And another one of those things where there were a lot of people in there that I kind of recognize that person.
Yeah.
There were some people that I recognized, but they were a little bit fringe. And I liked that because you're not throwing in massive names to attach a face to. Yeah. But there were so many big, I feel like the fantasy world was so big this year.
Yeah.
With House of the Dragon and all of these Star Wars shows that came out, and even the Marvel shows and all of the superhero shows, which I haven't really watched any because it's, again, the thing where it feels so overwhelming.
You don't be embarrassed for not ever watching Star Wars, but I will say, I mean, it almost makes it more exciting because it's like, wow, we get to experience your point of view watching Star Wars. Maybe we make that like a mini series on this podcast. Like we'll watch each Star Wars movie from the beginning to like the essential ones, right? So like the originals, the prequels, and then the new ones. And we can do an episode. We can do a little mini series episode around
Amanda reacts.
To each of those. We've been talking a lot about TV, and I want to try to wrap things up. I feel like this was just a very TV year. There wasn't
Don't Worry,
a lot of
Darling. I feel like just dominant, like all year long, everyone was waiting for Don't Worry, Darling to come out. I don't know like what sacrifice Olivia Wilde made to the media gods, but it felt like that movie has been coming out since January 1st.
Well, that was only because of, but that was all that was about her and the chaos behind the scenes that she created.
I didn't even watch it. Not that I'm not going to. I'm sure it's lovely. I mean, I love Florence Pugh. Anything she's in, I will watch.
I've heard good things about it. Again, it's more sci-fi than I think some people expect it to be. I have to throw this out there just to try to run through this. I pulled up Time Out's best films of 2022, and I have issues with it because their number one film was a film that I could not get through. I tried twice. This has never happened to me, and I'll spoil it a little bit where I'm going with this, but I was a huge, and I'm put an asterisk on this now. I was a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan for a long time.
Okay.
I tried watching Licorice Pizza. I could not get through it.
Okay,
I tried
that's
twice.
Fair. I mean, I got as far as reading the description being like, I'll wait on that one. So you win.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, it was Philip Seymour Hoffman's son was in the movie, and he plays a role. He's one of the main characters. I think the actors themselves, I think they were great, right? It's no fault of theirs, I would say. But and this is going to sound as the critics might refer to it as woke. It's really hard to connect to a movie to explain it a little bit is the Alana, who's the main character, by the way, is also her real name, which I didn't realize. Alana Haim.
Okay.
And Gary, who's Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, Cooper Hoffman. They have like a will they, won't they? Not even a will they, won't they? They have there's like a love connection, but he is like, I forget how old he's supposed to be in the movie. It's like 15 or 16 and she's like 23, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And so,
Okay.
you know, at first he's like, you know, he's hitting on her and trying to like, you know, schmooze her like a typical horny teenager, right? Oh, here it is. He is 15, she's 25. So 10-year difference.
That's a little tough.
Right. And
That's a little tough.
And so like she pushes back his advance. I'm going to reading right out of Wikipedia is like she rebuffs his advantage, but they strike up a friendship. But it's just there's so many like where it goes and how it meanders. Like I was talking earlier about like different TV shows and like sometimes they meander. This movie meanders and it's a 133-minute movie and it just meanders around. And I love the cinematography of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. I love that. But it was just like, I don't know. I'm sitting here watching like, you know, the 15-year-old is trying to go for the 25-year-old and she's like, no, thank you. And then when he moves on, then she's like, well, why doesn't he like me anymore? And there's still like this thing between them. And then randomly, you know, Sean Penn or Bradley Cooper show up randomly in like roles where I'm like, I don't know. Like I think I've lost touch with Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and I'm also mad at I'm quite mad at Time Out magazine for being like they marked it as like their best movie of 22, even though it apparently came out last year.
I'm looking at it right now, and I mean, okay, so I was like I said, I was going to watch it because you know the hubbub around it was great, but as I'm looking at this, we would be absolutely remiss for not talking about Top Gun. How did we not talk about that?
Yeah, I know. That's one I haven't seen. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it either. Okay. I have not seen it either. And that is because we're all starting to learn a trend here. My lovely partner has not seen the first one. And I'm like, how?
Wait a second.
Fuck. Yeah. Have you not seen the first one?
Have you not seen it?
He's not seen it. And like, I don't know how any male that grew up in the 90s hasn't seen it, fantasized about it, lived it, wanted to be it. I don't understand. Yeah. So we're working on that. We're definitely working on that. And I'm bummed because I wanted to see it in theaters. I felt like this is something you see in theaters. This is like, you got to be there for the experience. So miss that boat. Off she goes.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll be watching it on my couch.
I mean, they're already talking about bringing it back to theaters this month or next month or whatever it is.
I heard it was honestly incredible.
Yeah.
Like
I've heard great things about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I mean, Miles Teller just, whew. Thank you for that.
I had one more movie that I wanted to mention.
Okay, I'm ready.
Mainly because it was another movie that was painful to get through, and I'll set the scene. We went on a family vacation to the beach, and it was essentially a hurricane the whole time. So we were just like stuck in. Yeah,
that was a bad time for you guys.
Terrible time. I'll pair this together with a backstory, which I think help us explain it a little bit. It's about Will Ferrell. For those that don't know, Will Ferrell, all the movies he did, right, were him partnered with his friend and creative partner, Adam McKay. They're the ones who formed FunnyOrDie.com, right? They worked together for, you name it, Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, Anchorman was him as well. Like Adam McKay and Will Ferrell were a force to be reckoned with, right? They had a falling out a couple years ago. Will Ferrell worked with Adam McKay. Adam McKay started working on a bunch of other projects aside from Will Ferrell, right? Will Ferrell was not involved in. He did The Big Short was one of his movies. Will Ferrell was not in The Big Short. And then he did Vice, which was also not starring Will Ferrell. Somewhere in there, he was doing a show for HBO. Will Ferrell did Semi-Pro. So I don't give Adam McKay I give him a little bit of credit here. It was a sports drama, I guess a little, you know, with that injection of comedy there, but it starred John C. Reilly. Somewhere in there, and the details are still a little bit fuzzy here, but Will Ferrell had a falling out with Adam McKay over that because I think Will Ferrell thought he should have been cast in that role instead of John C. Reilly. That led to a breakup of them, even their company, right, which was their production company they worked together. They ended up breaking up. Where this all connects to where I'm going with this story is then Will Ferrell said, well, I don't need Adam McKay, and started doing his own movies on his own. And I think we're finding out maybe he needs his creative partner for all those years.
Hard times.
Very hard times. here's where it gets down to. So I'm on vacation. We are stuck inside. And my sister-in-law picks, Will Ferrell. He's funny. Who doesn't love Will Ferrell? Let's watch this movie. And it was Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga, starring Rachel McAdams. It's a story of these two people. They're from a small town in Iceland. They dream of being singers. Anyway, it was
awful.
So painful. It is so painful. It was extremely painful to watch. I don't know where anyone thought there was humor in it. It was not funny. And even if you like step yourself aside and be like, oh, like Eurovision's not an American thing, right? It's like a ex-US thing. It's obviously a European thing. No, it was still painful. And I will say, Adam McKay went off and did Don't Look Up, which people had opinions about earlier this year. But
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too.
Right?
Right? And then the other movie that he did this year too was Spirited, which was the musical he did with Ryan Reynolds.
Yes.
It was good. I thought it was way too long, but I think my hypothesis is they essentially wrote the movie and put it all together. It was 127 minutes long. So just to be clear, that's over 2 hours of movie. I think their goal there was to create a movie based on the IP of A Christmas Carol and then have it spin off into a Broadway musical. I think that was their goal.
Okay.
Is to just put all the pieces together so they could just adapt it to a Broadway musical, and now it's a thing. Will Ferrell's career taking a slight,
it's fair
turn. Yeah, that was probably the two things I watched or didn't want to watch.
You just reminded me, and I could not think of it. And I know that we're talking about movies right now, but I don't know if you are a Peaky Blinders fan, but the final season came out this year. And that was probably one of the most satisfying show finales. I much like you're saying, Better Call Saul. When we were done watching it, we looked at each other and we were like, I am so happy with how that ended. And it wasn't the happy story. Like it wasn't, happy-go-lucky, which that show was never going to end in a happy-go-lucky way. Especially when their main, one of their main characters passed from cancer and, before they could film the final season. So that I will say, and I can't believe I almost forgot it. That to me was like, it was beautiful. It was such a lovely ending. Any Peaky Blinders fans out there, it was fantastic. Am I crazy, or did that show have another like sequel or prequel or something too? Right? No, I don't know. I don't know of one.
I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong there.
I really enjoyed that one. That was just one. I can't forget that because that was, I would say, probably the highlight of my 2022 shows I watched was that season finale. And we waited. It came out and we just kept pushing it off. When you have a show like that, you don't want it to end. Yeah. And you're like, well, as soon as I watch this, it's done. I had that with Better Call Saul. Dense. Yeah, it's very dense show. So it's like, I don't know that we'll go back and rewatch it because they are hour-long episodes and they're very intense. Yeah. It's gone. It's gone forever. Also, the cast list on this show. Is this the kind of show that like the cast changes over time or something? Because I'm looking at the cast list and it is massive. It's incredible. It is. So the main characters stay the same the whole show. Like the family, they stay the same, but there are characters introduced as the family kind of gains a little footing and becomes a bit more prominent. And then he gets to mix with more prominent inner circles. And so, yes, there are the last season kind of takes place with him being, spoiler alert, him being a spy for Winston Churchill, trying to take down the Hitler regime before it becomes overtaking the country, which is so wild because when you're first watching that show, you're like, oh, this is just going to be like a, action-packed show based on this, the Peaky Blinders, and then it gets really intense. But the season finale or series finale it was well done. So that was a wrap on Peaky Blinders in 2022. Yeah, I will say to help put a bow on that for you too, as a fun fact, because you're usually the one who comes out with the fun facts, but I'll come around with you now. The creator of Peaky Blinders was a guy named Stephen Knight. It's a BBC show, obviously, originally. Stephen Knight also created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I did not know that. Very different shows. Fun facts. very different show. Yeah. Although, the Peaky Blinders wanted to become millionaires, and they did. So I guess it all circles back. Ba-da-boom.
Is there anything you're looking forward to in 23?
Well, like we just said, that will be the last season of Stranger Things. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that wraps up. And I feel like, too, there's another series that's supposed to have another season next year, and that's the last one. I can't think of what it is.
Well, Severance.
Severance. Oh, I can't wait for that. But is there any movies to be looking forward to in 2023? I mean, the only one that I really was looking forward to, and back to our episodes, was the Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
I have not seen The Whale yet, and I am quite excited about that. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it too, I feel like most of the stuff I'm looking forward to are either like, limited series or
Same.
Yeah, it's a lot of they're easier to digest. They're easier to I will say
Wonka coming out, friends.
Oh, no.
Okay, I know what it is. I know what my answer is, guys.
All
Two
right,
things.
Okay.
John Wick, love Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine Bear. I can't wait
I
for
heard
Cocaine Bear. I cannot wait for Cocaine Bear.
I mean, I love the fact that Cocaine Bear is one of the top of the list on the list of like things that might be tiring at this point. But I will say the trailer came out recently. It is ending a franchise, the final Guardians of the Galaxy movie. As
yes,
mainstream
I
as
don't
that
like
might
Chris
be.
Pratt anymore, but yes, I will watch it.
Yeah, I'm also off Chris Pratt. I'm also
okay. So to tie it back to Peaky Blinders,
yeah.
The hottie that plays Mr. Peaky Blinder himself,
Mhm.
he is going to be playing in the new Christopher Nolan movie called Oppenheimer about
I didn't realize that's him.
yeah, the development of the atomic bomb. So I'm sure that'll be incredible.
I do love myself some Nolan movies.
Yeah, that's probably going to be, and Emily Blunt is in that, I believe,
Really?
as well.
I do appreciate how
And Florence Pugh. Oh my God. Robert Downey Jr., Gary Oldman, Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon. What a cast here. Rami Malek.
Wow. I will say too, and I'll give it to him too, because I feel like I have enjoyed what they've done with the series a lot more than like James Bond or anything, but the new Mission Impossible with
okay, that's fair.
Tom Cruise. And they're doing it as a 2-part movie this time. And I don't know if this is also the last one for Tom Cruise or if he's finally retiring from this, because I mean it's getting up there. I mean it's been a while, but they're breaking up the movie into 2 parts, which is the first time they've ever done that.
It's very Harry Potter of them.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't sleep on this one. It's going to be a comedy. Barbie, starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, but it's directed by Greta Gerwig.
I'm actually excited about that. I think that's going to be pretty great.
Well, Greta Gerwig too doing that too. It's like has she done comedy? I mean, I guess
Lady Bear was a comedy. It was more like a coming of age mother-daughter story, but it was a comedy.
Yeah, it wasn't a big budget studio comedy, but it was clearly, but like it was a comedy. So
Little Mermaid comes out next year.
Yeah,
the live action.
But that's great. So it's been a fun year, and this has been a good year for the podcast.
It led us to create this podcast, which I'm so grateful and loving doing.
We have a lot more in store for next year, and then we'll keep the train going. Hopefully, none of knock on wood. Knock on wood, we don't get
COVID anymore.
No more COVID. No COVID in 23. We gotta none of that, and then we can finally move on and have consistently weekly released episodes as we continue forward into 23. So,
thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a good year.
And thanks for the support. We don't say that at the end of this podcast normally, but I will say thank you for the support.
Yeah, thanks for the support.
The feedback has been amazing, and getting people to tell us what we're doing right and wrong definitely helps guide us in the future of where we're going with this
Absolutely.
thing. So it's been fantastic. And
I keep those suggestions coming. I love them. I love when people are like, please do this, please do this. So keep them coming.
Yeah. And we'll I started seeing I was reading some of the reviews for the podcast too, and I love that. And so we have gifts, we have t-shirts and hoodies and all kinds of fun stuff we have to start sending people. So let us know who you are, where you are, and
make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. So until next time, thanks everyone.